I'm Cassidy from Centrifuge, and welcome to our series DeFi Drip, where we talk about all things coffee and changing the world of finance. Today we have Kevin Miao on with us, the head of credit at BlockTower Capital. I want to get into all the juicy details about your work at BlockTower, but first let's talk about coffee. So tell me, what is your relationship with coffee? I guess first off, do you drink it?
Yes, definitely a coffee drinker. I think I started drinking coffee in strawberry frappuccino version in form from Starbucks as a near high schooler, and now I still drink Starbucks coffee just in can form. But yeah, no, I like it. I like nice coffee, but I'll drink crap coffee. I don't discriminate.
Okay, so you've got the Starbucks can with you, but when you go for the nice coffee, what are you going for? What kind of coffee?
I usually like cortados, like kind of
Nice.
just a smaller, yeah, like a smaller, more mild form of it. If I'm drinking coffee like before work, I'll always just get straight black coffee and generally iced coffee. I don't like I have a very sensitive mouth when it comes to hot drinks, and so yeah, definitely a nice coffee, black person.
Black. All right, nice. I'm also a black
Too.
coffee person. Yeah,
Nice.
I got my drip coffee here. But I would say I also started off in the really sugary version of coffee first. But I think it changed once I actually had a really good cup of coffee and realized that, oh, I can actually drink this black and it's enjoyable.
Do you ever use the Chemex at all?
I have before. Right now, I'm on a AeroPress level.
Ooh, all right. So I just got a Chemex, so
Yeah,
I guess I need to try it out for a little bit before I graduate.
nice. Okay, next time we do this, you can whip out the Chemex and we can intro with that.
I love it.
Okay, so now that we've had our coffee, let's get into some of the details. I'd love to hear what you're working on at Block Tower and how you got involved with the team.
Yeah. So I guess I'll invert those real quick because it might just make a little bit more sense of what we're trying to do. But I was a normal dude and still am a normal dude who had no idea about finance when I was in college, and then ended up, going through the whole econs, like studying econ and math, and then ended up going into finance, like what a bunch of blind children do when they leave college. So I went to Citigroup and started doing everything from trading subprime mortgages to asset-backed securities, everything from basically vanilla type credits like prime autos, so auto loans, auto leases, credit cards, and the like, all the way to the other side of the coin, like esoteric. So that could be anything from drug royalty bonds to rail car leases, aircraft leases, and the like. And by the time I left, had been basically doing, like basically all of this different stuff, both on the private and the public side. And from there, decided that I didn't want to run on the same hamster wheel over and over again, and left to become the director of operations at an early stage fintech lender called CapChase, which was one of the best decisions that I ever made. Not because I didn't love my experience at Citi, because Citi made everything else in my life possible, 100%. But it just was an opportunity to go see a hyper growth company, from a $125 million Series A valuation to a $780 million Series B valuation. Don't get too many chances like that. And there I worked on basically everything that had to do with underwriting, risk management, portfolio management, and just building out that book and building out the systems and automating that. And that was an awesome experience. Very, I would say, like, same coin, but different sides from what I was doing before, where I was backing mid to late stage fintech lenders off of our desk. But then on the other side of things, now we were actually the ones who were going out, getting customers, making these loans, but then trying to go find someone like a Citi or some hedge fund to basically buy the loans that we were creating off of our book. From there, I ended up deciding that just like I was so compelled by what was happening in the crypto ecosystem and in DeFi, and also knew for a long time that there were like serious use cases for this technology and in this one tiny part of the world that I had spent my entire professional career in, which was securitizations and credit. And I knew that because on both sides of the fence, as both an issuer of these deals or like a creator of credits as an underwriter, or as an underwriting company at CapChase, and then on the other side of things as an investor, like to facilitate basically the wheels of commerce. Like today, it's PDFs, it's Microsoft Excel, it's like disjointed bilateral communications that all these different parties have to re-audit, and in order to re-audit it, they extract fees. And I was like, I'm pretty sure blockchain fixes this. And I knew that because the industry had written a paper in 2017 about basically how blockchain fixes it. So I'd been following it for a really long time. I knew that was where I was going to go, ended up going to Harvard Business School, and then within a month of being there, basically got poached out by Matthew and Ari, who had BlockTower Capital here. And at BlockTower Credit, we're the fourth fund of BlockTower's family of funds. So there's a directional liquid currency hedge fund, a non-directional market neutral hedge fund, a dedicated venture fund, and then our fund is the fourth fund, which backs non-digital like assets. So we don't invest in Bitcoin or Ethereum or different like types of arm strategies. We don't invest in loans, or we don't make loans to other crypto adjacent companies. We back what I was doing before: asset-backed, senior secured facilities for early-stage fintech lenders, traditional non-bank lenders, the CapChases of the world, but in an earlier form. And then we basically use Centrifuge to bring that type of exposure, which we go out and source, professionally underwrite, structure, off-chain today, hopefully on-chain in the future, but and then we bring that exposure to Centrifuge and work with a network of partners to fund that in a variety of different ways.
Nice. Sounds like they lucked out getting you on board.
I think I lucked out getting here, honestly. So yeah,
nice.
It's been a great mutual experience, but also meeting people like you and Lucas and Ron and the rest of the Centrifuge team. It's been just an unreal experience so far. So super grateful.
That's awesome. I guess for you, what do you think makes BlockTower unique?
Man, it's in many ways so I'll caveat this by saying I've had amazing experiences everywhere that I've been. Unlike like a lot of my friends, like I've had the occasional stapler thrown at my head on the trading floor, but other than that, like just a phenomenal mentors, bosses, teammates, and I would say that trend absolutely continues here. One thing that I think sets BlockTower apart is you kind of have this feeling that you can get to whoever you want to at any point in time. Like it's a really well networked and just capable and competent organization in every respect. And so for me, that's been kind of shocking, because I think one of the things that I didn't really recognize before, and Matthew and Ari had mentioned it to me, it's just like, listen, this is going to, like, in order for us to build this, it's going to take a lot of partnerships, right? And in order to build those partnerships, you have to like get in front of those people, and we can get you there, right? And I think for me, that's not something that I've just internalized at the beginning, but it's something that I've seen over and over again. Like the power of the BlockTower brand, which is earned, is something that I definitely underestimated coming in. And then I would say, like, in terms of the people here, it's just top notch, like best in class operational, like backbone of this, this entire fund that supports all four family of funds. The marketing team is incredible. All of the individuals on each of the individual funds are incredible. Matthew, as a leader, is just a relentless optimist, like constantly like driving us forward and keeping his eye on the ball and this like long-term goal of building BlockTower into this really dynamic and synergistic family of funds. And then also Ari, of course. I mean, anyone who's followed Ari on Twitter or listened to him on a podcast knows what he's about. And it's just it's an honor to be here, and just super excited for that. And I would say those are the two big things that set BlockTower apart. Just this kind of really powerful brand and this network, and then on the other side, just phenomenal people who are super humble, relentlessly optimistic, constantly working, and I love that environment, and I think that it's a great thing for crypto, honestly.
That's awesome to hear. Thanks for the color there. I think it's really interesting to see the insight on how this organization works together. I think maybe to dive into the DeFi aspect a little bit, can you explain to us a little bit why BlockTower believes in real world assets? I mean, specifically, DeFi is such a big category. Why do you think bringing this structured credit on chain is so important?
Yeah, man, there's so many different aspects of this. I would say BlockTower has been investing in real world asset or real world lending DeFi platforms long before I got here. So early investors across all of the centrifuges of the world, right? And institutional lenders through Maple, through Clearpool, like we have this kind of experience and this understanding through the network that, hey, if we want to find someone to basically be a customer of our platform, BlockTower is one of the, if not the only game in town for a lot of this when it comes to a digital asset native fund. And so it was something that BlockTower has been doing well before I got here, I think. And I think the reason for that is, I mean, even going back to October of last year, I remember listening to Ari on that podcast before I had really gotten to know him. And he talked about real world lending being just this kind of the next frontier. And I think for me, and I don't want to speak for everyone else here at BlockTower, the reason is because at this point, like DeFi has built a lot of really interesting primitives and rails to facilitate value movement and capital movement according to preset conditions, which in many ways is exactly what a securitization in structured credit really is, right? Like structured credit tranching is really just like taking the cash flows from a bunch of underlying assets, distributing them according to some preset priority of payments, which are effectively if-then functions, and then sending those to investors. And that's a real world use case that facilitates literally credit, at least here in the US. And it's so systemically important. And I think that when you see that, oh, wait a second, this DeFi infrastructure does that, but it only does it with digital assets. Well, what if we took that infrastructure, the efficiencies that are native to this type of technology, but then start to build the legal and the operational and the structural framework around that to do that, but with real world assets, right? Which are and always will be a much larger target addressable market. And so I think as crypto grows out of this phase where they've been laying a lot of this kind of infrastructure, they're chasing the next market. The next market to me is not going to be more like digital assets. I think there's room for a lot of growth there, but the next real step function change is going to be this technology making its way into the real world and showing that it has real utility, real efficiencies when you actually take it seriously. And that's what we're trying to do here at BlockTower.
Yeah, totally makes sense. I think from what I'm hearing, to summarize what you just said, real world assets are going to play a huge role in actually scaling DeFi to the next level.
I definitely agree.
All right, so let's jump into Centrifuge then a little bit more and your partnership with Centrifuge. Can you explain to us a little bit more about how that works or how you guys are seeing this integration unfold together?
Yeah, I think when it comes to our partnership with Centrifuge, I see it really across, many different layers. First and foremost, working with the team has been an absolute pleasure. This is there are very few teams that are as serious and as long-term oriented, at least in my experience, as the Centrifuge team, and that's really incredible. So we've been super grateful for that. And all we're trying to do, I guess, is basically be the right type of partner for platforms like Centrifuge, and obviously Centrifuge itself, where when I think about what Centrifuge is today, and this will change in the future as the technology and as they continue to build different services on top of this core technology, but really it's two different things. You have this kind of marketplace where investors can come and basically take their pick of, senior or junior tranches, or in the future, any variety of this, backed by real world income producing, secured, structured credit assets, the type of things that traditionally were not available to, regular investors, but now are through, honestly, Web2 platforms like Yield Street and Percent. But now you're able to do that in a kind of DeFi native way, directly on chain through Centrifuge, and the off chain and the on chain structuring that goes into that, to make sure that it's a safe way to do this. But the other side of it is kind of the efficiency side, right? Like what Centrifuge and the smart contracts do is it integrates with this SPV in effect, and it takes the cash flows from these underlying pools of borrowers, and then automatically effectuates the distribution of payments to investors according to some waterfall. So there's a senior interest, a senior principal, a junior interest, a junior principal. Like those investors get those types of distributions automatically through smart contracts. And the reality is, in like traditional like securitizations today, that takes like 15 different counterparties. You've got cash coming in, it's collected by the servicer, it's going into the SPV bank account. You've then got the calculation agent who's going in and trying to decide, okay, how much is the A due? How much is the B due? Then we'll get the paying agent. They'll debit the bank account, send the right amount of money to DTC for each like individual tranche, like declare this is interest, this is principal, and then DTC sends it to a prime broker. Prime broker sends it to their investors who are holding those CUSIPs or those individual tranches. Like it actually gets a little bit deeper than that. Like, but even that alone, like all that is a series of if-then functions and money moving around, right? That's literally what this technology does. That's what Centrifuge does already today. So you have this marketplace that, I think will become more dynamic over time as BlockTower and others start to issue, kind of additional like deals on this platform, open that up, and more investors come in and get comfortable with these types of assets and the types of returns that they're able to generate through this. But then on the other side of it, you have this just core securitization engine that has a potential to really replace a lot of the anachronistic like securitization infrastructure that we have today. And I think on both sides, like that's where we can really basically come and bring value to Centrifuge, right? We can come and bring assets. We're bringing capital. We're bringing professionalism. We're bringing other like DeFi partners into the fray when it comes to the marketplace side of things. But then on the securitization infrastructure side of things, it might be a lot more boring, at least to other people. But to us, that's what we love. Like, thinking about how can we streamline the KYC onboarding process? How can we actually think through some of the different nuances of what the structure should look like, shifting interest or sequential interest, fixed or floating, like, just really helping to kind of like explain what we've understood and learned through our years of investing at the highest levels in structured credit, and what are the nuances of these different types of structures, and how can you basically do that in a way where now this code base can replicate all of that with zero marginal cost, so that anybody in the future can come to this platform and securitize their assets, whereas today they're completely boxed out. An early stage originator can't go to a Citigroup and do it. It's too expensive. It's too time consuming. Citi won't even give you the time. And so that's this like open future we're really excited about, and that's what I like hope some of our insights can help Centrifuge basically just continue to refine their product roadmap going forward. Sorry, I just monologued for a little while there, but I obviously get pretty excited about this part.
Yeah, it's awesome to see. I mean, I guess a disclaimer there, I would say I was already convinced, but I think you've just convinced me even more that this technology is really just a no-brainer. And bringing real-world assets on chain, financing them through DeFi is just the natural next step of how the financial system is going to evolve. I think within that context, though, why do you think BlockTower is positioned to excel in that specific domain? And how do you think the partnership with Centrifuge will actually get you there?
Yeah. Man, that's a good question. I don't really like to talk us up a ton, even though I think we're an amazing team and an amazing group, but it's still early for us and for everyone. So, I don't want to come out here and say we're these just absolute world beaters and the like, because while I do I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't think that we had that potential. Like, we haven't proven anything yet. But all being said, I would say the reason that I think BlockTower is uniquely positioned to do this is, one, we've already been doing it. So, like, as I mentioned before, like, we've already been lending through DeFi platforms. We understand operationally how a lot of this stuff works, and it's not easy. Like, especially when you're starting to bridge the real world and the digital, like, kind of crypto ecosystem right now. Like, you're running two parallel systems, and in order to run two parallel systems, you have to know how each of them work, right? For us, we know how the real world works. It's ugly, it's messy, it's inefficient, but it's end to end, it's holistic, it works. It's been doing this for a long time. Today in DeFi, while this is growing, you can only do some of the things on chain, right? Like, and so for us, because we have this like really deep structured credit background, and because we have this, deep like on chain background, we know like what we can do in both of these realms and how to really like kind of manage this tension of running these two parallel systems really efficiently. And so that's something that I think sets us apart. It's something that we've been working on for the better part of a year at this point. And so it's not easy. And I think for us, that's a huge embedded advantage. Number two, I think it's, again, when it comes to the brand that Matthew and Ari and the rest of the team have built here, like, genuinely, I think like if any other fund or traditional finance, like kind of fund comes to town or comes to this like realm, and then they're like, hey, we want to do this, like the default and the correct stance is they're trying to take advantage of us, right? Like that's like that's 100% probably what's happening. Sorry, 100% probably doesn't make sense. That's 100% what's happening. And I think for us, like, that's not the case. Like, I wouldn't be doing this if it weren't at BlockTower, because I believe in a more efficient future. Like, I think that this is one step of the ladder that we have to do to, bring all of this stuff on chain in the future, right? We play a critical role, bringing capital, bringing assets, bring some degree of professionalism into this space, at least from the investment side of things. And like, and going from there and then say, okay, well, now we can start to build the ladder and like get to this point where more and more of these things come on chain, and nobody would take us seriously, or no one would believe that we had that vision in the future if we hadn't already been doing it for 6 years at BlockTower, right? Like, that's what we're about. That's what we do. And so I think it's a really powerful advantage for us. It's certainly something that we take very seriously here at BlockTower Credit, because like, we don't succeed unless this ecosystem succeeds. So we have every like incentive, whether that's alignment with the protocols in terms of like token ownership, whether that's governance, like we have every incentive to do the right thing. And that's really important to me. And something that I think we have really thought deeply about here at BlockTower in terms of how to tie ourselves to this ecosystem long term. And that's just not true of others who are coming in from the traditional side. And when it comes to other, digital asset native firms, I hope and actively expect that they will do what we're doing at some point in the next few years. But they have a lot to learn on the traditional finance side, because it's not easy, and it's going to be a long time before you can do all of this stuff on chain.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, it sounds like you guys really have built a really solid history and body of knowledge, really, on how to push the space forward, marrying the two, structured credit and DeFi. So that's really awesome to hear, I think. I'd say maybe looking forward, what is something that you're most excited about achieving from this partnership with Centrifuge specifically? And I think maybe in the context of also that you guys have partnerships with a few other platforms doing maybe similar things within real world assets, but what do you think sets Centrifuge apart from those other platforms as well?
Well, I think what really sets Centrifuge apart is, and I'll caveat this by saying, I think all the platforms in this space, that we've talked to and have ongoing conversations with, like, they're all doing incredible things. They're all doing things in their own lane. But for me, when it comes to Centrifuge, like, I think it's that element of, you have these two ideas, right? You have this marketplace, and then you have this securitization engine. And what goes into the securitization engine is all of the off-chain stuff that, that Eli and the team and everyone at Centrifuge has been working on so hard for multiple years. And that's stuff that isn't sexy, like, right? Like, no, like there's no like massive growth in TBL because you set an indenture trust structure, right? But it's that type of infrastructure that you have to lay in order for real institutional investors to take it seriously. Hopefully in the future, that's not the case, right? Like I genuinely want a future in which like on-chain ownership of an NFT like that represents a loan is you actually owning the loan. But for the foreseeable future, that's not the case, right? And so how do you actually bridge these two worlds? Centrifuge has been super thoughtful about that. And then also, this element of just like kind of smart contracts on top of these SPVs or on top of these like platforms that allow you to tranche out according to, your preset metrics in like, it's a pure securitization engine, right? Even if no one invests in this deal, the fact that you can take these cash flows and send them and distribute them according to a waterfall, it sounds basic in, when you say it out loud, but that literally takes 15 counterparties in traditional finance. Like that is outrageous. And I think that part of it is something that really sets Centrifuge apart because they spend a lot of time thinking about how to replicate that engine, both in the legal space, both in the actual like technological, the engineering space. And then also just like, I think, other partnerships with DeFi platforms, right? You've got the Aave, like the real world, like asset market. You've got obviously, integrations with Maker and the like. And so, yeah, I think that's kind of really what sets Centrifuge apart and, makes us excited to partner with them. Again, I think everyone in this space will be doing kind of their own things, and continuing to develop and refine what they're working on. And at some point, perhaps in the future, there will be some sort of convergence. But for us as a structured credit fund that invests in real world assets, like Centrifuge is certainly we're certainly happy to be aligned.
Awesome to hear. You mentioned Maker there, actually. And you guys recently shared an arranger proposal to MakerDAO's forum. Can you tell us a little bit more about that and what opportunity you see with BlockTower working together with Maker?
So I think when it comes to our proposal with like the Maker arranger and everything associated with that, one, I think it's a good display of like how aligned we are. BlockTower itself, out of our family of funds, is one of the largest Maker token holders in existence. And full disclosure, we don't vote on anything that has to do with us. Like we don't, like that's not what we do. But I think it shows that, hey, as a firm, right, we're committed to the future of Maker. We wouldn't hold all of this if we didn't believe in where Maker is going and the potential and the possibility going forward. As we were kind of like scoping out the whole ecosystem and saying, okay, well, we bring this really differentiated kind of product, I guess, within the DeFi space, which is the ability to go out and source and underwrite and understand these types of assets and then bridge them on chain through partners like Centrifuge in a very kind of like compelling and safe manner. Like that's the like who is on the other side that could benefit from something like that. Well, Maker was an obvious choice, and I think for us, as well as we become more ingrained in this ecosystem, we've come to understand that there's a lot of good you can do by being active community participants, right? Like we have seriously stepped up our game in this regard. Have so many conversations with core units, with the community members, with delegates, with token holders, and we really kind of wanted to understand like what are their concerns when it comes to exploring real world assets. What have they liked in the past? What have they not liked in the past? How can we continue to raise the bar in terms of transparency, in terms of professionalism, in terms of exposure, the actual credits themselves, right? Like that's why we talk so much in the forums and about junior capital. Like that's the alignment that needs to happen, because anyone else who's just kind of doing this, once they like deal with Maker, like they don't have that alignment that we do. Whereas like unless Maker gets everything that they want, which is a return and their principal back, like we don't get anything, right? That's the way that it's coded into the tin lake and the drop and tin structure. And so we wanted to be very, very focused on delivering Maker something that we thought was compelling end to end, from the legal perspective, from the technological integration perspective, which Centrifuge plays a huge role in, but then also that the assets themselves make sense in the context of what Maker is trying to do. So really excited about that like kind of proposal. I think it's going to be something that like is going to be good for raising the bar, honestly. Like we are in such early stages right now, and Maker has done on their own so much fantastic work in this regard. I mean, you've got guys like SocGen and Huntington Valley Bank, right? Like these are amazing things that were probably inconceivable even just a few years ago. But now through Centrifuge, I think we can start to bring a lot of that back on chain, and we can seriously start to help this like scale in one way and scale safely. And so that's kind of how we view our role and in partnering with Maker. Like Maker is a customer of ours, just like everyone else is, just like Centrifuge is. Like we have to do our part to make sure that whatever we're bringing to the table is something that they want, that makes sense for them. And when we propose something, people believe us because we own the tokens. Like we wouldn't be doing something that would be actively like, you know, value destructive. And we genuinely don't think that's the case here. So yeah, that's a little bit about that.
Yeah, thanks for walking us through that. I think I really personally love to hear how involved teams like yours are getting into the governance process. I think it's something that I'm personally really diving into for Centrifuge over the next couple of months. So maybe I'll bring you on in the future and talk about that process a bit more. But I think it's something that a lot of teams are really evolving these days, this governance process within this DAO framework. And Maker is really pushing us forward as a space in terms of, you know, setting a precedent for what that process should look like. And it's just awesome to see teams like yours actually thoughtfully and actively taking a part in that.
Yeah. And I think that's true of, you know, many different funds as well. I think when we talk to, you know, other funds, like the view going forward is that how do you really add value? It's by being active. And it's a lot easier to be inactive when everything is, you know, going up and it doesn't matter. You could literally just toss money at whatever and you'll make money. But like in periods of time like this with, you know, who's going to stick around? Well, it's long-term oriented investors. I mean, here at BlockTower, we think on decade-long scales. Like we're going to be here doing this. I mean, I don't even know how long. I can't even make that like type of, like I can't see it ending, right? Like we're on a mission to change like finance, like, and we're going to partner with whoever is, you know, has the same goal, like Centrifuge. And how do you actually help make that happen? How do you help these, you know, like platforms, these protocols, like stay oriented around that for a long time? It's by governance, right? It's by being active in these communities and doing your part. And so I think that's so different than traditional corporations, because you know, it straight up doesn't matter like what you think or whatever. Even if you're a huge, you know, venture like capitalist and with a gigantic stake in a company, like you don't have the same influence. Now, all that being said, I don't think that DAOs are like the end all be all either. Like I think if anything, what has become evident for sure is that like these structures need to change. I don't know how that's going to be the case, and they're constantly changing already. They're living organisms, but like there's just no doubt that the current structure is not. It's not the end state of this, and you see that with kind of Maker and the end game kind of you know, platform and where they're trying to go with this, and you see, you know, different protocols going in different directions, whether that's simplifying or, you know, whatever path they choose to take. I think that there's so much white space there. That's what's so exciting about what's going on. But like at the same time, yeah, I don't want to sound like a full-throated defender of DAOs here. Like there's a place and a role for those types of things, but there's a place and a role for businesses. Like businesses would not have emerged through the natural selection of like you know, economics and financial like, you know, innovation or, you know, just like business innovation if they didn't make sense. And I think as we kind of go into the next phase of growing as an industry, it'll be up to us to decide which structures work better for others, right? DAOs might work better for public good type entities, and then centralized structures might work better for, you know, early stage startups that are actively trying to like organize efforts around creating a product and and getting revenue and getting customers, right? Like they're both going to exist in this world forever, but we have to do a better job of deciding like what side we're on.
Yeah, very well said. I think we're totally in agreement there for sure. I really appreciate you taking the time and chatting with us today. I think maybe to wrap us up, I'd love to know, do you have any hot takes that you can share with us, whether about DeFi, TradFi, or real world assets that you've just got on the tip of your tongue there?
Yeah. I feel like I kind of preempted this question by accident with that. I mean, I got a lot of hot takes. It's like I don't even know if this would be the right the right forum for, or the right amount of time for it. I would say this. My honest sense of where DeFi is today is that it's so much earlier than people think. Like it's not. It has a really, really long way to go. Now, the reason that I dropped out of business school or did any of this other stuff and came here is because the reality is, like, you can see the kernels, right? Like you can see this infrastructure that's composable, that plugs into all of these things natively, where someone could be building NFTs for CryptoKitties on one side, and then all of a sudden that becomes the basis for like a senior tranche of like trade receivables on, you know, like this innovation and this entropy in the system. Like you're like working in this industry, like you're able to capture that. Like you're able to like benefit from something like that happens way over there in this niche corner of the world that you're working in, and that's really powerful because that doesn't happen in a non-modular, like traditional system where, you know, these 15 counterparties in traditional securitization, they're passing an Excel file around just to make sure that they, you know, that they captured whether or not this person or these 100 or 10,000 people made the payments on time, right? Like that's something that I think this technology, when it gets to the point where it's about to flip, like it's going to flip way faster than people think. But I think from where we're at today to get to that point, we're so much further than most people think. And I think part of that is just like it's driven by speculation, it's driven by just like hopium or like, you know, whatever it is, and I think that's great. Like that's what got me excited. That's why I'm here. But like that's only enough to get you surface level excited. You have to get way deeper into the weeds to really start to like understand why this technology matters. Right. And you have a lot of people in this industry who have probably never had a real job and have probably like never really seen the insides of how broken traditional finance is. And they see the memes and they're like, this is like going to fix everything or whatever, but you don't even know what you're trying to fix. And so like, I think for us, like there's a new wave of kind of people coming into this industry who do have that experience and who see it. And I'm not trying to say like, oh, that's like, there's no reason for everyone to be here. Like that's absolutely not the case. But I think that there are people who also are just like me, who spent a bunch of years like banging their head against the wall, being like, this is so broken. Why is it not better? There's no hope of changing anything. And then you really dig beneath the surface here and you're saying, wait a second, this is still early, but like there's something here for sure, right? And if I keep working really hard and align myself with the people in this industry who are long-term oriented missionaries more than mercenaries, like we will figure this out. it's just going to take us a while, and it's going to take us being honest with ourselves about how to get there, right? Like the system of the future isn't just going to emerge because it's it deserves to be there. It does, but that's not how it's going to happen. It's going to be a ladder. Like we have to build products that matter for people. We have to basically on the smallest scale start to change some of these things. And I would just say we're so much earlier than we think, but there's so much more potential than people realize, I think.
I think that's a great place to leave us off. Thanks for talking with me today. It was really awesome hearing your thoughts there. And thanks to everyone for tuning in to our very first episode of DeFi Drip.
Awesome.